Welcome, gentle viewers. Today we are entering another dimension. Not one as exciting as our own, but one that maybe, just maybe, you might catch a listen to. And this is the Vlogcast. Hello, everybody. It's been good seeing you all today as I sit back in my recliner with a cat in my lap. And notice that I've got bleach stains on my sweatpants, but that's okay, because they can't see it. And any case, let's see here. We have our guests here. We got Mo and Dane with us today. Dave may or may not join us shortly. And, of course, we have Jake.
Hi.
As always on our show. So... the theme that, there's no really
darkness
theme,
beyond twilight.
There is I always try to throw the picture off of the first thing that I'd throw out there. And I just finished it, which was a movie called Journey to the Center of the Earth. And this is the one that has Pat Boone as one of the main draws. And as Jake said, yes, the Pat Boone. As he and his companions and a duck journey to the center of the earth, as the old Jules Verne book or novelization. And though nobody has done it quite to the justice of the novel yet, I still feel like it was a fun go round. I know Jake hasn't seen it, but have either of y'all seen this one? It's like the 1956 version.
Yeah, I saw that when I was a kid.
Used to play on TV all the time.
I may have seen it in passing somewhere through the year. I can't remember that I saw it. I'm sure I would have remembered that one screenshot you put up. I'm sure that
Well, see, Dustin, I figured, would have really gotten a kick out of it, because one of them, like two shots, they have lizards, but they've taped like plastic like fins to their backs, which I thought was just great.
That's like the Star Trek, the original series, like all the exotic animals that are actually just dogs that they put like fuzz onto to make it look like a exotic animal, or even like the tribbles, which are literally just puffballs, you know.
How about you, Mo? Have you ever gotten into this one?
I don't think I've seen that one. No, probably like Jake. Maybe I saw like bits of it at some point, but I know I've seen some version of Journey to the Center of the Earth. There's several though, from what I remember. So it's like I'm not sure which one it was. I feel like it might have been black and white.
It does make me mad that this is out of print. So many of these things are out of print, and they're hard to catch on streaming. And it is sad because it's a gem as far as I'm concerned.
You know what they really need to do with the re-release? They need to have an audio track option to where you can turn off the sound of the movie, and the soundtrack will be Pat Boone's In a Metal Mood.
Hearing that like lounge act version of Stairway to Heaven.
Oh God, I love that. It's so awful. I love it.
It's just if anybody hasn't, it's sacrilege. It really is. But it's funny sacrilege. As you hear Pat Boone do these things, it's called Pat Boone in a Metal Mood. If you haven't,
a long way if you want to rock and roll.
I mean, hearing like Smoke on the Water, Stairway to Heaven, Paradise City, what other ones? There's just like a whole bunch of these. He's like,
doesn't he do Sweet Child of Mine?
What was that?
Doesn't he do Sweet Child of Mine?
Yes.
Wait, not Sweet Child. No, Paradise City was the jam.
Paradise City was the one he did for Guns N' Roses.
Yeah.
It was
now, if I recall, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure this is correct, but I believe it was Pat Boone that you said he did the kind of swing or like traditional pop version of Crazy Train for the Osbournes.
Yes.
theme. And apparently the Osbournes lived next to him for quite a long time, and he apparently was very nice to them, and like refreshingly so. And I guess Ozzy really liked the that version, and it definitely worked for the show.
So the track listing is, you've got Another Thing Coming, Smoke on the Water, It's a Long Way to the Top If You Want to Rock and Roll, Panama, No More Mr. Nice Guy, Love Hurts, Enter Sandman, Holy Diver, Paradise City, The Wind Cries Mary, Crazy Train, and Stairway to Heaven.
God damn, he went hard. Like, just so many classics, I'm sure, ruined. I need it. I need it in my life immediately.
Yeah, I want to hear the rest of them, because I mean, I liked what he did with the Crazy Train, just because it suited the mood and the feel of that show, because it was supposed to be like a send up of Leave It to Beaver and things of that era, and it definitely fit.
There's also a really great live rendition by a Richmond local group called Carbon Leaf. They did Crazy Train, and it was quite good, but it was a little different from this.
I mean, when I had that, when I was back in grad school, and they had a group, we would do some house concerts that we would go into, listen to some really cool like indie bands as they would play in the kind of downtrodden scene that couldn't quite get into Alley Cats. And there was one group that got together. They call themselves Corn on Macabre. It was not my favorite band of that night, because it was a group called Fall on Deaf Ears, which was freaking awesome. You couldn't understand what the heck they were saying, but that was all right, because the lyrics they had, they'd give you the lyrics, and the lyrics were just like amazing. It was so deep. But they had a cover. Corn on Macabre had a cover of darn it, Paint It Black, which was just amazing to listen to. It's too bad that a lot of these bands you don't.
Oh man, that's a missed opportunity. He should have had Paint It Black on this album.
Well, they were they were like a horror themed punk group, so
yeah.
It's always interesting whenever you talk about like artists in the rock or metal spectrum covering some other song and then kind of making it their own, or vice versa. Like I mean, I think Marilyn Manson's one of the crowning champions of really great covers, and then then you had like obviously the famous Johnny Cash cover of Hurt by Nine Inch Nails, which that kind of I think it was even Trent Reznor himself said it's not my song anymore because of what Johnny did to it, and he meant it as a compliment, and but he covered Personal Jesus by Depeche Mode and things like that. So it's interesting to kind of have the shoe be on the other foot.
Well, we tried to do that video at one point, or I really wanted to, and we kind of did one of like ones where the covers were better than the original. And there are several where it's debatable, but very few where it's clear that the cover was better. Hurt was one. Aretha Franklin's cover of Respect is one, and there are a few where it's clear that they were better, but it's a lot of times you get an interesting cover or even a really good one. Like you said, I absolutely love the original Eurythmics version of Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, but I'll give Manson credit for his version.
Oh, so that's one of his best tracks, I think, that he's ever done. And, it's kind of what put him on the map in the early days. But as far as like everybody goes back to Hurt as the example of the cover being better, which, for me personally, because I'm such a Nine Inch Nails fan, that I really love the original version of it, and I don't think it should be discounted. I mean, I think it is probably the best. I think it's probably the best Nine Inch Nails song that there is. So as much as I love what Johnny Cash did with it, and I think objectively you could say it was better, but I don't want people to forget about the original. I mean, and how could they? Because I mean, I've seen Nine Inch Nails in concert twice, and every show they end with Hurt, which is appropriate because I mean, how can you really top it after that's like the ultimate climactic number. So, but yeah, I don't want people to forget about the good originals when there's a particularly good cover out there. And then sometimes, like you said, with Aretha Franklin, a lot of people don't even know that Respect was not her song. And if anything, the original version of Respect was not at all what her version became.
No.
Like, it became like this big kind of, I guess you could call it almost like proto-feminist kind of anthem. And, then, and I say proto because that was like before the third wave of feminism and all that. But then the original was all about, from a man's perspective, wanting to get respect from his woman. And, I find that kind of amusing because of how much of a role reversal it was. And,
like some Rodney Dangerfield shit.
No, a little bit. Which now that would have been awesome if he'd have done a cover of that.
Oh man. I will say though, on the whole like silly albums to Rappin' Rodney's a fucking classic.
Oh yeah. Has anybody ever looked into his life story? Like his life story would make a great movie. He had a very tough life, and it took him quite a while to break through. Like he had a whole stand-up career as Jack Roy. That was his stage name. For quite a long time, he was not successful at all at stand-up. He left the business because he and his showbiz wife at the time, they both agreed to settle down and live the normal life. And he sold aluminum siding for quite a lot of years, but he always wrote jokes, like actually physically wrote them down, set up, punchline, everything. And like his is just a great story because then like when he was older, he kind of got the showbiz bug again. And he changed his name to Rodney Dangerfield because that was what someone had suggested because Jack Roy just wasn't doing it. Yeah, and then like the years of experience that he had getting a good compendium of jokes together, like actual physical written down jokes, he was able to then finally start to get some heat. And then he got on Johnny Carson, and then he got the role in Caddyshack, and then the rest was history. But his life story was quite inspiring to me because like he had a tough relationship with his family, and he struggled with depression his whole life, and it took him quite a long time to break through, but then once he did, he became one of the most iconic stand-up comedians of all time. And all you got to do is say, no respect. I got no respect, and it's like all you got to do is say that and everyone knows him. And, he's just got like he had the face, he had the googly eyes, he had the voice, the mannerisms, it's funny because like a lot of comedians, especially around his time, like the younger ones, they kind of moved away from your standard set up punchline. They were more like storytellers, which I think was actually pioneered by Bill Cosby, if I'm not mistaken, and then kind of taken into new forms with someone like George Carlin, who he kind of melded it with like philosophy and just kind of, then eventually he kind of called himself a writer who performs his own material rather than a comedian in the traditional sense. But then with Rodney, it was like he was called a stand-up, and it was true because his was very, very traditionally structured in terms of the jokes, but man, were they funny. And it's like I've never really seen that classical setup punchline structure for a joke. I've never really seen it done so well because he could just fire them off one after the other, and with amazing skill. And yeah, it's like if you want an example of just like the prototypical mold for a stand-up comedian, but done really, really well, that would be him. He's not terribly like if he's on the far end of the traditional spectrum, but done really well, then someone like Andy Kaufman's on the far end of the other end of the spectrum, being really avant-garde. And, but to this day, people are kind of split on him. I really thought he was brilliant for what he was trying to do. But yeah, they're completely different.
Just trolling like a
Yeah.
boss.
Well, that and also just he was the master of just being able to. Well, I guess he kind of pioneered anti-humor, but like he was the master of pulling pranks and trolling, but also he was able to take something that really shouldn't have worked, really wasn't very funny if you were to see it on paper, and yet he could somehow make magic out of that. And but he never called himself a comedian. He called himself a song and dance man. And you know, again, it's like, what does that even mean, comedian? You know, the ones who do it really well tend to be the ones that break the mold. And you know, and even like George Carlin, someone like that, you could easily read his stuff, and you can, because he wrote a lot of books. And you know, you could easily read it and get a similar effect, but it's better to hear it performed. But it feels like what he said, a writer performing his own material. And
Right.
you know, so and then of course you got like Carrot Top with all the prop humor and
Oh, good
you know,
lord!
this and that. So I
Chairman
mean,
of the board.
yeah, so I mean, they
That
take
piece of
on a
shit.
variety of forms. I'm kind of waiting for the next great kind of pioneers of comedy. People that kind of, I think, occupy their own space in the comedy sphere, which it's not even really all that perfect of a comparison, but someone that a group, you know, duo that occupies their own unique space in that world is Penn and Teller, because it's not just comedy, it's magic, it's, you know, this, it's that, it's all these things together. And you know, they never really considered themselves comedians, and they technically aren't in the classical sense, and yet, you know, they have a lot of dark comedy in their shows.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I'd like to go ahead and do a shout out to Michael McNally, who is in the audience again. And again, great to have you with us. But also, I guess I will move over to Jake, because I know that you have a list. So if you get the opportunity to toss one out to us.
At this point, I'm kind of wondering how much of the list I want to stick with anyway. I feel like most of it's gotten at least a bit of discussion at some point here or there.
I've been kind of crossing stuff off if I mention it.
Right. But I guess this would be an appropriate time to mention, because I know we've talked about it a little bit on the channel, but we're talking about like old comedians and comedic styles and that sort of thing, and people who get no respect and whatnot. So a movie that came out last year on Netflix that a lot of people thought should have gotten some Oscar buzz was Dolomite Is My Name, which I did see during this lengthy spell, since we did a proper one of these back in the day. And like I said, I know Brandon and I have talked about this. Have you guys, either of you, seen that one yet?
I have not seen that one yet.
I've not either, because I have in my collection, I have Dolomite and I have The Human Tornado, and I want to watch those first, so that way I can fully appreciate it.
I know that
I've seen the original Dolomite Rules, man. We used to laugh our ass off at the trailer for
Hey,
that.
was it you that put up that picture of that complete collection or whatever? That's like, I kind of want that. So basically, this movie, of course, you got Eddie Murphy playing Rudy Ray Moore, who became sort of a blaxploitation pioneer. Certainly, he pioneered the four-walling method for low budget, or at least was very successful at it, but not for a while. For a while, he was a struggling comedian. He was a struggling kind of sort of musician, more of a comedian, but he was about on the verge of giving up, and then he launched into this movie that this movie is all about the making of that movie, more or less. And it was a fascinating movie. It really, I think Eddie Murphy really was, he should have gotten consideration more than he got. Might have even been a snub for acting. And freaking Ruth Carter's costume should have been up. I mean, this really had a good 70s vibe to it. That's all I got to say on that. Is
Well, I think I don't know where it played because again, the Academy being the geniuses that they are, they made it such that it has to play in a theater in Los Angeles within a certain amount of time and blah blah blah. But it's like
it did qualify. It definitely
it did. Okay, good.
Netflix put a lot into.
Yeah.
They had about 8 or 9 films that they put a lot.
They make sure that those films get into theaters. Those ones they want up.
Not for the general viewing public, which they want to subscribe to their service, but no. From what I understand, Marriage Story had the largest release yet from any Netflix film. And I think the only one that came to Richmond, though, was The Irishman. I'm pretty sure it was the only one. And we had it here for, a week? I think it was, maybe.
You know what would be funny is if 5 years from now, Netflix is like a big theatrical as well as streaming, and Universal becomes all streaming.
Well, did you see that story just today about how Amazon is in talks to buy AMC?
Oh, yeah, of course they are.
So, I mean, well, hey, I'll take that over the current management because it ain't working under the current management. And especially like when AMC and Regal, when they decided to throw a hissy fit because Universal did the theater at home thing. And it was like, I just, when I read that, I was like, are you serious? That's literally like saying, oh, I broke my leg. Okay, and I can't run. Well, I'll show you. I'll break my other leg just to show you. And it's like, that's kind of how it was. It's like, are you seriously trying to commit career suicide right now? That's what you're doing because the theaters need the studios, not the other way around. And, the studios ostensibly are doing the theater owners a favor by showing their movies in the theater. And, again, I've made the argument before that the theaters are a largely outdated business model, but that's why I am excited to see if Amazon can do something new with it, because out of anybody, I trust them to do something new with it.
Even though they're kind of behind the purge.
Of course, this is kind of interesting, though. Like in this movie, is kind of interesting in that it does show sort of the differences between how theaters have run in the past and how they're running now. I mean, like I said, they end up finally getting the film out there by four-walling. They basically rented a screen for a night, and then just, and to everyone's surprise, it was the hot ticket in town.
That's really how theaters should go back at this point.
Well, that's what used to happen. Was not only that, but like regional releases were much more common, and also like roadshow versions of movies. Like there weren't as many prints circulating, but the prints would travel to various theaters and kind of get released at different times in different regions instead of like in theaters everywhere on this day. And if you don't have a decent opening weekend, then you're screwed. It wasn't like that. A movie could word of mouth was still a thing that, a movie could build over time. And I mean, it still can, but it's not nearly as easy. It has to kind of come out on DVD or streaming in order for that to happen these days. But, I mean, it used to be much more regional. It used to be a lot more gradual. And the theaters, they could choose which movies they wanted to book. It wasn't like it is now where largely the studios, either they own the theater chain or they have such close ties to the theater chain that, they're essentially able to dictate the business that the theater is able to do. And, so that's why with AMC and Regal, when they saw that, Universal was releasing their stuff on streaming, that's why they were throwing a hissy fit. But it's like, well, remember where the power is concentrated, guys, number one. And also number two, the old model or the current model is not working. I agree with you. I would be more, if theaters are to survive, I would be more in favor of giving the theater owners more control over
Yeah.
what they think is best for their market, and also like being able to rent screens, be able to get more of a regional presence for different types of movies, like
That'd be amazing.
well, and like here's a concrete example of that kind of happening. Kind of, but like if you guys remember from like 2014 to like, it was like a few years, it's kind of slowed down a little bit now, but like with God's Not Dead and with other like Christian films that were small budgeted, but they made a big impact at the box office relative to what they cost to make. And that was such that I remembered observing that, and I was like, the regular movies, they're not really making the kind of numbers that the studios want them to make. But then you've got these smaller budgeted films for a niche, but a built-in audience that will go to see these films. And they didn't cost very much to make. And yet they're doing these kinds of big numbers, and they're able to fill this void of things to actually put on the screens day to day. And it's like, well, what's so wrong with that as far as just good business sense? You're like, well, this has a prepackaged audience that they will go see these things. There was kind of a boom with them. I think it's slowed down, but it's like, I'd love to see that with like, if we could have a more kind of regional film presence, or like I did some research, like in Canada, they don't have a singular place that is their Hollywood. Like they don't have a singular location where it's all happening. They have regional centers for film, like Vancouver. They have, which again, a lot of stuff from LA for like TV shows and stuff gets filmed there, or like Toronto, or Montreal for like French-based, French language films and TV, or like I think Halifax, Nova Scotia has their own kind of film scene. So in other words, if there were to be a less centralized film scene in this country, if it could be more regional, or which again I don't think it would be, because I don't think the Hollywood bigwigs would give up nearly that much power. But like, if Hollywood could still be like the mothership, and then you had other centers that could have more sway in the marketplace and in how they deal with the theaters, and giving the theaters more power to choose what they put on their screens and blah blah blah, you would get much more choice, and I think you'd get happier theater goers, because they could.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, they could see what they want to see.
You can make the definite argument, though, that New York is pretty powerful in its own right, and that there are a few other big hubs, and maybe not as big or on the same level, but hubs like Atlanta, like Wilmington, Chicago, that are pretty big too.
Yeah. Well, but even then, it's like the main concentration of influence and power is still LA, except for like some outliers. Like for example, Saturday Night Live is obviously very much a New York City show, and a lot of things, they still happen there. And again, Atlanta is coming up in the world and has been for a while, but even so, the power and influence is still very heavily centralized in a way that it isn't in other countries. Now, the challenges with something like Canada is because it's not centralized, and because their population is like a tenth of ours, and so because the American film industry has such a huge reach, we're kind of the India of the English-speaking, predominantly English-speaking world, as far as just sheer output, because India dominates the Eastern film scene in terms of sheer output. But like, because of that, and they don't have any protections for Canadian exclusive Canadian films to be shown, like a certain percentage of them in theaters, in the same way that they do on Canadian television. Like there has to be a certain percentage of stuff that is distinctly Canadian to be shown on TV. They don't have those protections, and so a lot of uniquely Canadian films cannot compete. Which again, I think if you did more of like either some kind of regional thing, give the theater owners more autonomy, something like that, I think empower the people, then you'd see a different result. But of course they won't do that, because then that would mean giving up their centralized power, and they wouldn't be able to cash $1 billion checks, and things like that.
It certainly would be cool though, just to see the variety that would come from it being more like that again.
And I can say, if you're talking about like concrete examples or whatever, I can give a concrete example of the centralization of theaters, because I worked at a movie theater when it was owned by Carmike. I worked for a theater about 4 years ago, and I left before they were bought out by AMC, which I'm sure it's much worse now that AMC is behind it. But when I worked there, I inquired about this, and I was told point blank that they really had no say over what they played at their particular theater. It was decided somewhere way beyond their pay grade that was the movies they were getting. Now, granted, that particular theater did get a lot of Indian films specifically for Indian audiences. Half the time they weren't even subtitled, or they were poorly subtitled, but they did usually have 1 or 2 Indian films screening in a given week. And they did get some Fathom events, but more to the point, they just got some random anime, like one-off releases that might not have even been for Fathom. But mostly it was just, they had their slate that was given to them by corporate, and that's what they played. And I remember thinking, like, really? The theater manager has no say at all? That's really kind of stupid,
You were talking about like the old way with Dolomite and how they did it. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that method. Then there was somebody that did that just not long ago. And if I had known that I was going to be stuck inside, I would have worked to get this, because my wife wasn't really all that interested in going. And that was Kevin Smith when he did his release of the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. He actually took that show on the road, and he went to various locations all throughout the country showing that film. And it got a lot of grassroots support because of that. And, Kevin Smith has a lot of power so that he could do something like that. But that's like the traditional way.
And the venue he brought it to here was not traditionally a theatrical venue. It's a concert venue. But it still is one that I get what you're saying. And we have our historical theater in town. The Bird is an historical theater that keeps afloat mainly through donations and the small ticket prices. And they are a second-run theater, but they also show local stuff, like home-brewed stuff that would not play at any other theater. But they're completely independent. But like I said, they're also not a big player overall. They're just your local, theater sort of thing. But it would be cool if we had a few more. I remember the Grandin and Roanoke was kind of like that, but they were kind of a hybrid, if I remember correctly. I don't know how much autonomy they had.
Well, I used to know they played the Wurlitzer over at the that's just how they did. I mean, it was not just the movie; it was a whole theatrical experience beyond it.
Yeah, they have one guy who's been playing the Wurlitzer organ on Saturday nights for how long now?
If he's still doing it, then that's amazing. Because it was a long time when I was watching movies there, and that was like 20 years ago. So Dane, what have you been watching? What's a film selection you like to throw out there at us? Or maybe not.
obviously watching a lot, and I just want to remember exactly what all I watched and which ones would be good for discussion purposes. But yeah, just you can come back to me.
Okay, how about you, Mo? I know you said you had at least one that you were thinking about. You had some pretty cool stuff you were throwing out there in that pickup video that it was out there. I mean, there's some pretty
Oh yeah. I haven't got to watch too many more of those yet because I was watching stuff that I've gotten since then. So probably the most recent one that I would definitely like to recommend to people is that Brawl in Cell Block 99. If you've not seen that, you should put that.
I've heard really good. I've heard really good things about that.
That was on a lot of year-end best of lists. I really wanted to see it.
Myself.
It was done by the same person who did Bone Tomahawk, which I really loved.
Yep, that's the main reason I was like pretty fired up to see it to begin with. And then I just kept getting good recommendations on it, and it lived up. I think it exceeded the hype, actually. People maybe sold it a little short because they probably didn't want to oversell it, but it would be an easy one to oversell just out of sheer excitement because it kicks leagues of ass, you know.
Yeah.
What's it about?
Basically, this dude who's like used to be a boxer. They don't dwell too much on that. He was no Schusterman Levine, okay. He used to be a boxer or whatever, and he like gets fired from his tow truck job, and his wife's cheating on him or whatever, and so he's like, fuck this, like I need to get control of my life, and so he starts like being a drug courier. He ends up fucking getting busted and sent to jail, and in the process, like he kills a couple of cartel dudes, so they want to fuck with him. They kidnap his wife and they want him to kill this dude in Cell Block 99, which is like the supermax part of the prison. So he's basically just got to keep fucking dudes up to get like disciplined harder and harder until he makes it into the supermax, you know, part of the prison. And then it just goes off the fucking rails. I'm not going to spoil any of that, but gloriously violent without like going too far into like any type of splatter territory, though there is a little bit of that in there. There's definitely moments that'll make you wince. But it's bone crushingly fucking kick ass, you know? And it's got that perfect, like, it has that Grindhouse vibe naturally. It's not trying to smash it in your face like, you know, that Grindhouse double feature friggin' Tarantino and Rodriguez did or whatever.
It's funny you said that because at the exact moment you said that, I was reading a user review in IMDb that said the same thing.
Yeah. It just achieves it. It just, you know, it's very sincerely is, you know, a modern day product of those types of movies, you know. It's not full of a bunch of references or like nods. It's just its own thing. And the soundtrack kicks leagues of ass as well.
Well, isn't that nice, you know, whenever you have a kind of, a modern day Grindhouse film that is not just there to pay homage to the past, where it's really just trying to be its own thing.
Right.
Yeah. It's refreshing. It's not a wink wink thing the whole time. It's just it is a fucking Grindhouse movie, like you said. I think Bone Tomahawk does a fair job of, you know, melding like classic westerns with cannibal movies too, which if you think about it, back in the 70s was also a staple of theaters and shit.
Yeah. Well, what was cool about Bone Tomahawk was that cannibalism stuff aside, which, you know, I was a happy guy, but like what's I thought was cool about it was that it was a legitimately really great Western. Like if you were a fan of the Western film genre, it's pretty clear that the writer-director, whose name I can never remember, he clearly knew his stuff with the genre, and I know that he wrote like Western novels and things like that. And you really got the sense that his name is S. Craig Zeller. You really got the sense that he knew his genre, he knew characterization, he knew how to. I was surprised at just how funny the movie was. Like it was, and it wasn't like a comedy, but it was like the character interactions and all the various moments, the various moments that defined character were quite funny and very well done, and just a great way to flesh out these characters. And again, it didn't feel too breaking the fourth wall. It didn't feel too cutesy. It felt, like something that they might actually say in those moments. But yeah, it was just
Chicory,
really
the
strong.
old dude. That old dude Chicory, he's like my favorite character just because of that. It's funny without really trying to be,
Yeah, and it's just I think it's just an expertly written film. It doesn't get anywhere near the praise that I think it should get. At least
see, like the thing is too, he went opposite end of it with Cell Block 99. Like the movie is almost doesn't really have much dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of interesting. I was looking at this director here and his, you guys are talking about Drag Cross Concrete and Bum Tomahawk and whatever. And Concrete, one of the co-stars in the film, well, not major star, but a big part of the film, is starred in one of those films that was very much a wink, wink, nudge, nudge homage to the same genre that Dolomite Is My Name paid note to, which I see Drag Cross Concrete has Michael J. White, who I loved Black Dynamite. That was a wonderful nod to, but very much a semi-parodic nod, but the blaxploitation genre. But
yeah, I still need to see that one too.
That would be a good one for Movies Galore to do.
Oh,
one of these things.
I mean, Eddie Murphy was back in form. I hadn't seen Eddie Murphy form like that since his older days before he went family friendly.
Yeah, geez.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out as well. I might do that tonight. Dragged Across Concrete will probably be my next watch because I just grabbed that.
Yeah.
I'm curious about these myself now. I gotta,
I gotta check it all out. It's got me interested.
So Brawl and Cell Block 99 sounds to me like one of those very, very straightforward, what you hear in the title is what you get. Does that sound about right?
Yes, very much. It's just an ass kicker. Like I said, he kind of stripped away the crazy, like more intense dialogue, and it's basically just a pissed off Vince Vaughn kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta love a little truth in advertising, right? That's I praise something like Mac versus Giant Octopus.
Yeah.
Tell you what they are. They, I guess it's actually problematic when you're talking about. The Soska Sisters Vendetta with Dean Cain and The Big Show. That was a WWE Studios film, and I think pretty solid. Definitely to just.
I don't know. Is Dane cutting out to the rest of y'all?
I'm having trouble hearing.
You might.
Yeah, I was just about to ask.
Yeah, Dane.
You missed a lot of good insight there. Maybe try signing out and signing back in, because that might improve the connection.
Yeah.
And I'll let you back in, because that sounded like some good stuff and then got cut off.
I want you to have the best audio.
But sometimes it is. That's the problem. We're all slaves to the internet as it is.
Yeah.
If the connection sucks, then it gets hurt, and we can't always predict which one of us will have the good connection.
Yeah.
Well, while we're waiting on Dane, what about you, Dave? Do you have a film to throw our way?
Well, I recently revisited with my fiance and she was at first hesitant, but the most powerful weapon in the world is the 44 Magnum.
Go back to those films.
There we go. How about now?
That's good.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, the what I was saying was I thought about something like Vendetta, which, like I said, had Dean Cain. The Big Show was a WWE Studios release that was done by the Sausage Sisters, who I really love. It is very violent, very just kind of relentless in what it's trying to be, but but the problem is that one. And
You're still having issues.
I don't know what it is. Must be the internet connection.
where did you hear me?
Because you had gone through a lot of that, and then it was just like the last like couple seconds of what you were talking about that cut off.
These those don't really do.
That damn 5G, man. That's what's doing it.
Well, on the same time, it's what's probably happening is that we're all listening to it, and it's actually but when it gets recorded, it's going to all come out, and we'll hear it.
Well, I can hear everyone else just fine, but
See, now you sound fine.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, at any rate, I think that basically what I'm saying is like have a eye-catching title no matter what, but especially if you have a smaller type film that could stand to get noticed a little bit easier. Something generic like Interrogation or Vendetta, it's like who cares,
Yeah.
even though they may be
Or
good
Headshot.
movies.
See,
That's what I
that's
just
great.
grabbed today. Headshots. Don't know what it is, but the title, I was like, well, fuck it.
Or
Well,
something
like that
Kotobuki.
that's Sylvester Stallone movie Bullet to the Head, like that's a good title.
Sometimes it's good to
Yeah, it
have
immediately grabs your attention.
sometimes it's good to have one like this where it's like you know exactly what it's about. It's like Brawl in Cell Block 99 or Hobo with a Shotgun or
Oh, yeah.
Hot Tub Time
Yes.
Machine, something like that. It's very simple, straightforward. But I've seen, the ultimate example for me of one where it's not exactly a title that made sense, but you would have remembered it. You would have remembered it, and I guarantee you it would have done better box office. And that was when I think it was Doug Liman maybe that directed that the adaptation of the manga All You Need Is Kill, and then they released it as Edge of Tomorrow. It's like,
and then on the Blu-ray release, they tried to retcon it as Live, Die, Repeat, and it's like,
and it's like, yes, All You Need Is Kill makes no sense, but you will remember that title.
Oh, yeah.
But Edge of Tomorrow, what the hell's that? Who cares?
yeah. Or
It's
Live,
like-
Die, Repeat is not that much better.
No.
I mean, I'm with you. I would have preferred All You Need Is Kill, even though grammatically it doesn't make a lot of sense in English. It probably was okay in the original Japanese, like whatever the equivalent would have been. But in English, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it does stick in your brain. And I mean, if we're talking purely advertising, then that would most definitely stick in the viewer's brain. But yeah, I mean, I put a lot of thought into the titles when I am starting a project. Like that's actually probably the first thing I come up with, because I always put myself in the mindset of the person who is scrolling through whatever streaming service he or she is scrolling through, and thinking to myself, oh, what do I want to watch? Do I want to watch Vendetta or Dishonor or Defiance? Do I want to watch that, or do I want to watch Hope with the Shotgun? Do I want to watch Zombievers? Do I want to watch even something like Bone Tomahawk, like that? Well, something like Bone Tomahawk, which isn't, it's a horror western kind of, but like it grabs your attention, and it's not it is asking you to take it seriously. It's not like trying to be a just cheesy time, but like you can. It matters what your movie is called, because if it's just this bland generic name, then it's just going to fade away into nothing. And so I put a lot of thought into what the title should be, so that way it kind of stands out. And then that kind of hones me into saying, okay, if I'm the viewer and I'm scrolling through for something to watch, I come across a movie that's called this. What's the connotations of this? What kind of poster would go with that? What's the feeling that you're trying to communicate to people? And that can usually just help zero you in on what the tone should be, what the the feel, the style, the inspirations, all that stuff. And a lot of people don't think that way, and I think they should. I think they should be in the mindset of the audience a little bit more, because otherwise, you're not thinking about it from the kind of customer experience angle, if you want to use the marketing term. You have to think about it in those terms, so that way you can provide something that they can't get anywhere else.
I do like the whole background to the Grindhouse thing. I do kind of like that style they would do back then, where they just slap titles to shit and posters and just fucking outright lie to you sometimes.
Or you'd have like several titles for one movie because of one reason or another. And one of the more clever parts of Death Proof was when you see what the original title was supposed to be. It was like Thunderbird, Thunderbolt, something like that, and then you have that obviously inserted later really crappy title card that says Death Proof, and it was so clearly like a alternate title kind of homage of something that got inserted later. Or like same with like in Planetary, you had the missing reel bit. So those were definitely some concerns from cinema's past. But yeah, the alternate title thing, like, that's another pet peeve of mine. Like, when it's something that it's not so bad when it's on the small exploitation level, because usually those that's just more common, and it's more of a thing of the past. I don't really think that goes on anymore. But like, when you see it happening on like a larger studio level, that's when it gets infuriating and embarrassing. Like with Edge of Tomorrow, like with on terms of not the movie itself, I think the theater marquee of Birds of Prey, they changed it to Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, and because Harley Quinn had more marquee value. And
and because it was a Harley Quinn movie, they lied in the first place calling it a Birds of Prey movie.
But you know what I mean. It's like they well, but it just it's something that, like, when they clearly don't believe in their own title, or they're trying to kind of retroactively change it, then it just gets stupid. A good example also, not a full title change, but an addition of a subtitle to differentiate it, was like
Ghostbusters.
It became Ghostbusters Answered the Call, and I mean, that's not amazing, but it does kind of help to differentiate it. Or like Rambo, the 2008, the fourth one, they call on the Blu-ray, it says Rambo: The Fight Continues. And or even sometimes it can be a mistake, like the X-Files movie gets commonly referred to and even marketed as the X-Files Fight the Future, but the actual title card says just the X-Files, and that's what the official title was.
Sounds like a lame album title for like a pop punk band. Fight the Future.
Something like that. Or like or even like X2 XMen United, like the actual title card just says X2, and it's not the XMen United thing just got added later.
Of course, they had a bad problem with those. That one, I always hated the title because I thought it was a stupid title. But I think that's part of the reason why they thought, X2 will look dramatic on the. But no, that's a weak title. No one knows what that is.
It's weird when they kind of I'm not a fan of abbreviations or
No.
shortening something to make it like an acronym or initials or whatever. I don't really like that. And now,
Well, like
a
the new Men in Black was MIB International. It's like, just call it Men in Black. No.
yeah, or like
Put a 4 on the end of it.
Mission Impossible 2, which
Yeah.
or like Mission Impossible 2, which I do think has one of the best movie posters of all time. Like I really love that poster, but like, and it says MI2, and like for me as a kid, like because that came out when I was a kid, and I didn't see it. Like I just saw the box cover, and I was like, MI2, what is that? Because my brain didn't connect that with Mission Impossible, and so it didn't really connect in my brain. It's like sometimes that can not work in your favor. Sometimes it can work against you when you're trying to needlessly abbreviate it like that.
Well, didn't they do some shit like that with the Independence Day poster back in the day?
ID4, and it's like, what is that?
They confused the heck out of me with those abbreviations, especially when you had a sequel coming out.
Yeah.
So they had the sequel, and then they rebranded the original with a re-release.
Right.
It confused the heck out of me when that came out.
And then, you have the opposite, where they clearly don't have enough faith in the audience. And a good example of that was the Lost World Jurassic Park. It's like, just call it the Lost World. You don't have to spoon feed the audience that this is a Jurassic Park sequel.
Well, that or like what bugged me about that was the fact that they put the Lost World first. And then they put Jurassic Park, and it's like, wouldn't it have made a little bit more sense if it was Jurassic Park, The Lost World?
Right.
And ultimately, it was still its own animal. It didn't really follow the book, so what the hell?
Actually, Dave, since we're at that, and we're at the half-hour mark to go, I want to make sure I get to both you and Dane for something to throw up. But you had started talking about a gun, which
what you're thinking? Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I kind of lost track myself. But being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and would blow your head clean off, you gotta ask yourself one question: do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
You want to ask?
I watched Dirty Harry and the rest of the sequels that followed this last weekend. And over the following week, and I happen to love the series. The first one is so, it's slow, but it kind of reminded me of like a Brian De Palma film, in the aspect of it's a detective boiler. The first film is going after this Scorpio dude that just so happens to be like part of the serial killer Zodiac stuff, and he has this maniacal laugh that is just annoying as fuck. So it's enjoyable to see him die.
I'll never look at Row, Row, Row Your Boat again the same way again after Dirty Harry.
Well, and what's interesting is the second film is about police corruption. It's not just on the streets; it's behind the force as well. So once you had those lookalike bikers that are you obviously figure out that they're rookie cops, and it just so happens that the cop that dies in there is part of their whole scheme of making a better police force. Played in the original Dark Shadows TV show, so I liked seeing that. I mean, I hadn't fully actually looked at them until like this last weekend. So I've seen them bits and pieces over time. I've just never sat and watched them. So seeing them all in their infamous glory, it was absolutely thrilling. Because I still I love how Dirty Harry he comes up with the I mean the two classics and quotes where do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? And the other one was go ahead, make my day.
Imagine if Frank Sinatra had gotten that role as intended. We'd have had a totally different feel for that.
It would have been a different film.
I still love the poster I have with Frank Sinatra because they did have some print ups because he was definitely going to be the star in it, and then it just got there. So they've got some print up posters out there with Frank Sinatra as the K. Yeah, just.
I'm sorry, I still like the cynical Dirty Harry going throughout the. I mean, no holds barred. Let's kick some ass. Let's crash a car into a fucking store and let's create some havoc for the city as well as killing some bad guys. You know, that's justice. And I always got annoyed at the fact that when they did the whole court process because he didn't read them their rights and shit. And didn't do the right thing and get a warrant to search certain properties. He got so fucking mad at the system. So I think he just kept on doing what he was doing because it was better that way.
Well, I did like that he was not particularly well liked amongst the other members of the police force because he didn't dot his I's and cross his T's in terms of procedure.
And of course, as the films went on, he did start to do some of the due process shit, but you know, he still kept his lone wolf stature where he just decided to, well, fuck it all, you know. Even to the very end, and the Deadpool that to me, that's kind of a very young role for Liam Neeson in there as being a horror director.
I didn't know he was in that.
Ponytail. And Jim Carrey. Holy fuck! I forgot that he showed up and did a music video.
Oh wow.
In there.
Well, that was before In Living Color, and it was before he had like the perfect, you know, like 3 home runs in a row year in 1994. He had The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, all of which were smash hits.
Right.
But he acted in a lot of stuff before that, and it took him a while to get his heat. But then when he got it, oh boy, he was on fire.
I think the oldest thing I saw him in was a silly vampire comedy from the 80s called Once Bitten.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
And if you don't look for him, you will miss him. That's the thing if you on those early ones.
He was also in Earls Are Easy, if I recall.
Oh god, that was
a great
cool.
one.
I love that one.
That was one of his earlier roles.
Well, since we are, like I say, I hate to rush us through these things, but I feel like the Dirty Harry ones definitely connect well with the Grindhouse ones. You talk about straightforward. But do you have one to take us home there, Dane?
Yes, I do. I had to look through my my eBay orders to figure out what the heck did I watch that I ordered it, because my brain's been on like unboxing and trying to, be good with being the host of that show and blah blah blah. But as far as actually watching things,
real quick, I don't think Mo's done one, has he?
Yeah,
I did. Cellbox 99.
Cellbox 99.
I'm sorry.
That was that whole Grindhouse thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I lose track sometimes. Never mind.
No worries. No worries. Well, I watched 2 that I ordered recently that I wanted to well, one I want to mention, and the other one's a little bit more worthy of discussion. But like the one to mention was Everything Must Go with Will Ferrell. It was a very good comedy drama, hit close to home for me at this point in my life, as far as like someone that has kind of lost everything that once comprised his life in terms of people, possessions, place to live, job, everything like that. I could relate to it quite a lot as far as having just life completely ripped out from under you. So it hit close to home. But then the other one that I think garners a little bit more discussion was a film that you may have heard of, but it was called from 2011. It was called Marcy May Marlene,
Oh, yes.
and it had Elizabeth Olsen in it
Yep.
before she became the Scarlet Witch in the MCU. And she does a really great job in that film. I kind of wish I'd have seen it when it came out, but I'm glad to have seen it now. But like it was quite. That was another one that hit me in a different way, just because they clearly did their research in terms of different kinds of cults that have existed. So
Yeah.
like there was a little bit of the Manson family in there. There was a little bit of David Koresh. There was a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it was something that I felt like she did a really great job with acting. She I think that I really praised the direction. I thought it was very subtle, very kind of gentle, while also being very tense. And it really just illustrates how destructive cults can be on a person's identity and their ability to stand alone. And even if it's not like a literal cult, you have people, perhaps even in your own life, who their own personality makeup, their own just the ways in which they relate to you. They have a lot of those kinds of traits where they want to kind of create this world for you to inhabit, in which they are on top, you are on the bottom. You can't exist on your own without this person giving your life meaning. And they exert enormous control over you, without necessarily having to like hit you or something. They kind of create the illusion of, oh, you can go anytime you want, but of course they've made you so interdependent that you can't really. Just it shows the quite devastating effects of that kind of life, which in her case, it was a literal cult. But then I think you could easily apply that to any, like if you had really authoritarian parents, or if you had some kind of other oppressive authority figure or institution in your life that made it such that they made it seem like your life really didn't have any meaning unless you did what they said. And it's that kind of emotional abuse that, like, I think is, well, abominable, number one, but also number two, people need to be more aware of the signs of it. And so I think that's a film that points it out very well, but also it's something that, like, I thought about, that the psychology of cults and cult leaders. I thought about it as I was watching something like even Tiger King, which I went into it blind. I didn't know what to expect when I watched it. As soon as it started, I kind of thought, oh no, this isn't about bestiality, is it? And thankfully it wasn't. It was about everything else, but thankfully it didn't involve that. But like just the way that those guys, usually it was men at the top, but like the way that they run their communes, they run it like cults. They run it to where they are getting warmed by people's affection and their attention and praise and friendship. And, in the one guy's case, a lot of girls around, it's like, just, I'm very aware now of what the makeup of those kinds of societies and those kinds of people, what they are. And I would only hope that more people would see a movie like Marcy May Marlene, just to know what this looks like and the effects that it can have on a person. And when this person was like a young adult, she wasn't a child, which I think it might have even been more effective if it had been a child. But then, of course, the question would be, well, are the parents in the cult too, or did she get kidnapped or whatever? But yeah, I mean, I think that both of those they hit close to home in different ways, and I think that this one, like, it really was very well done. I think it unfortunately flew kind of under the radar in terms of award buzz and things like that. Which I don't really put a lot of stock into that sort of thing anymore, because usually the stuff that gets nominated is, like, in my opinion, like B or B plus quality work, and it's rewarded because it's flashy or it's the studio really want to push for this thing to be the award winner or whatever. But as far as like a quality piece of work, I think that this one was definitely that. And what were you going to say?
Well, part of the reason why this one did hit my radar was there was a lot of buzz for Elizabeth Olsen. It was just one of those ones where the buzz didn't actually turn into actual awards. But she got a ton of buzz, and that was one of the reasons I checked it out. I think John Hawkes got a bit of awards buzz too.
Yeah.
But it was a good movie. It was a hard film to watch. I did not enjoy watching it, but I definitely appreciated the acting. It was pretty solid acting.
Well, and I think that more people need to challenge themselves with films that are perhaps they're not necessarily pleasant sits, but they make you feel rewarded for having gone through that experience vicariously, because you feel like you learn something about the world and about or at least that's how I always looked at it. I'm someone that I like to figure out what I have learned from this in terms of filmmaking, but also if it's especially if it's something I'm not familiar with. Like a good example of that is something like The Wrestler, where I really didn't know anything. I didn't know anything about professional wrestling. I didn't know anything about WWE or anything, but then it opened up that world to me, and I was like, wow, I got to research this because this is fascinating.
That was a good one.
Really, really good. But like, I think movies can do that, and especially when the subject matter is something that might make people a little squeamish, or it might be painful or whatever. But it's especially critical when you're dealing with layers of abuse and manipulation and control, and the damaging effects that it has on a person, and just the fact that type of personality, the type of person that is persuasive and is authoritarian, but also charming enough to be able to amass a very, very loyal group of people and get them to do anything pretty much. I mean, it's a specific type of person. It's not all that common, but it definitely exists. And it's, I think, a pretty dangerous personality makeup. But you see it enough on a lot of different levels to where, that's why you even hear the term cult of personality. So it may not be like a literal cult, but a person is just so charismatic, or they're so whatever, that people will follow them and do insane things for them just because of some indefinable something. And I guess that, like, I'm a person that I like to know. I like things as much as I can, like, have things defined for me, and like make sure that what the rules of engagement are, and things like that. So then when people are willing to do insane things for another human being, especially for reasons that really don't make a lot of sense, then my alarm bells go off in my head, and I think that they should for other people as well. But yeah, it was just a really, really well done film. Hit close to home. Yep.
Can you remind me, am I remembering correctly that Hawks was the cult leader in this one, or am I remembering that wrong?
Let me look it up because the only other person I recognized in it was Sarah Paulson. Which
Oh yeah.
now, if there's one little complaint that I would have with the film, so I looked it up. Elizabeth Olsen was like 22 when this came out, and then Sarah Paulson was in her late 30s, and they're supposed to be sisters. But then, like when the movie first started, and she called her, it was like, "Come get me" or whatever. When that happened, I was like, "Is she playing her mother or what?" Because she was not. Well, she wasn't that far apart from her in terms of age to be her mother in like a conventional sense, unless she was like a teen mother or something. But she's far enough away in terms of age to where it just seems kind of weird that they would be sisters. But I mean, it's both possibilities are definitely possible. Definitely uncommon. But yeah, John Hawkes as Patrick, who I think was the cult leader there.
He's pretty
Yeah,
solid.
he did a really good job. But like
I'll
that
agree.
was,
Based
so
on what I know, I do feel I felt at the time that this seemed like they did a good job researching the idea of the cult structure, the way that it behaves. I did get the impression it was a well researched film, so I agree with your assessment that it's a worthwhile watch just to kind of learn something new. Really,
it's very
yeah.
educational. And I mean, I watch a lot of movies. Well, for that reason, because I love to learn. I have an insatiable need to learn things. But if not, certainly about the art of filmmaking. I'm always learning about that. Even with like a bad movie, you can learn a lot. But like I learned. I think it was like you said, they did their research. I had already done a lot of research on my own to that stuff, but they just supplemented it. And like I saw a lot of the Manson family in there, like with the home invasions, with the fact that it was mostly women. There were more women than there were men, although the men were certainly there. You had some aspects of like more extreme religious cults in the sense that there was this very definite separation between the sexes, and the wardrobe was pretty for men and women was both for very consistent and uniform. And you had some aspects of like the less publicized aspects of the Manson family, in the sense that like before the murders, the techniques that Charles Manson would use would be like he would take your hands and place them against his and like move them in any direction, and like he would make a series of faces, and the idea was for you to keep up with him as fast as you could. And the idea that there was no time, there was no future, past, there was only now. He would reenact the crucifixion while they were all on LSD, and he would like tell the girls like, "You're not dead yet. You're still thinking about your old life. You need to die and be reborn as this new person." And basically, it's just a destruction of the self and supplanting it with a new identity that an authority figure, a singular figurehead, is bestowing upon you. And again, you can see that on the cult level, on the institutional level, on the interpersonal level, where someone in power wants you to behave a certain way, and so they're going to try and manipulate you into being that way. They're going to try and guilt trip you, pressure you, do whatever they have to do to make sure that you obey. And again, my radar these days is very sensitive to that. So if I get the sense that someone or something is trying to destroy my identity and supplant it with something that they designed, then I get very on my guard about that, and I would advise other people to do the same.
Well, I mean, all institutions, a lot of institutions utilize those same tactics. The military, that breaking them down and then building it back up into something else.
Yeah.
when I was in Roanoke, and I don't know if you got to see, well, you probably didn't get to see the hazing I got to see, Jacob, because I was like right across from the frat.
Yeah,
I mean, they
you
would
were.
do some terrible things, duct taping people to a lamppost, throwing somebody naked into a creek, things like that. And these were things meant to break that person down personality-wise. I mean, I had a person that was rushing a frat, and he would come in there violently vomiting because they would force alcohol almost to the level of alcohol poisoning. And these are
Mm.
things like, and then they say, you're a great guy. We would love having you in. I was like, no.
Well, I personally think that, like, in my world, I mean, everybody's got their own things that set them off, but like in my world, the two most abominable things that a person can do to you, like that aren't necessarily like crimes. I'm not talking like murder, child molestation, anything like that. I'm talking just like interpersonal, like the way you treat someone. I think that the two worst things that you can do that aren't necessarily criminal, to me, in my world, they are, well, lying in whatever way, whether it's directly, whether it's trying to distort the truth, trying to euphemistic language can do that, things like that, things that try to mask the truth in some way. Or the second one is the destruction of a person's identity in some way. I think that those are the two most abominable things you can do to a person on an interpersonal, non-criminal level.
Mm.
Well, with that said, I think that's a great way to end us off on there. A great point to end on.
Don't be fucking lying out there.
But with that being said, why don't we go briefly through and just do a brief shout out for each of the things. I don't really have to do as much for my channel because we're on it. But actually, since we ended on you, Dane, why don't you go ahead and start us off with tell us a little bit about what's going on with your stuff recently.
All right. Well, I'm Dane Kyle. I've been doing a lot of work on the new YouTube channel, Indie Horror Film Creative. I recently got a new kind of YouTube name, Dane Damerung, because I thought that sounded pretty sweet. Comes from the German word for twilight, and everybody's got to have a cool YouTube name, and I think that that's a good one. But so I've been doing a lot of unboxings. I've been trying to, very in earnest, I've been trying to rebuild my collection after having sold so much, which again, that's why I related to Everything Must Go, because I know what that's like to just have to basically sell off and wipe away all of what's left of your life. But here I'm trying to build back up again, documenting the whole process. And then I have a iPhone stand, or like it's this bendable thing that it's sort of like a tripod, but like you can wear it on your neck too if you want. Basically, it's something that, because I shoot on my phone as of right now, I'd like to upgrade the setup, but like as of right now, because I shoot that way, this would allow me to not use my posters that are still not hung up. It would allow me to not use those as like a makeshift tripod, and I could have a lot more flexibility. And also, if I did it just right, I could use it as kind of like a makeshift, like a chest mount, so that way I could have two hands if I wanted to do like a bit where I show off the collection. I want to use two hands to pull things out.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So, but that should be in the mail, I think, next week. Yeah, so that I've been doing that. I've been trying to, well, balance that out, but also trying to find another job, also trying to go in the next creative direction that I conceivably can do given the current crisis, but also kind of determining what's the path for me? Is it a spec script? Is it a novel? What is it? And so that's kind of where I'm at now. But yeah, I acted in Dark Web Mystery Box, which should be on DVD soon. I did get the word from Hex Media that they are sending me my copy of For We Are Many finally, because it didn't show up at any of the old addresses that I was in. But yeah, I'll finally get my copy of that, which is good because that my film is in there. And yeah, so just kind of after having been at a series of crossroads, now I'm just kind of trying to build that audience on the new YouTube channel, and then also trying to determine the next creative path for myself, which the channel again is Indie Horror Film Creative. My current segment on there is Blu-ray views, and I'm going to, once that that tripod thing, the bendable stand for the iPhone, once that arrives, I'm going to begin doing something called No Money Film School, where I help to educate people about making films on the small independent level and just kind of introducing people to film theory in a way that they don't have to have gone to film school in order to get at least a start in it. And I'd like to do like commentary videos, or I've done a little bit of that. Like I did a comparison contrast with Rabid, the David Cronenberg film, and then the Oscar Sisters remake. Just try to kind of test the waters a little bit to see what people like. But yeah, I'm that's what I'm up to.
All right. Definitely looking forward to some of that. Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel. We got some big stuff coming up tomorrow.
Yes, we do. As you ladies and gentlemen know, we are doing Meet the Cast month, which is basically just a get to know some of the films that some of we ourselves personally enjoy and love, and kind of maybe a look inside who we are as people by choosing some of these films. So tomorrow we are enjoying SeptumSin versus the World's films that he has chosen. And I believe that he has chosen well. The first is being Take the Money and Run, which is Woody Allen's second feature film, but also to some people it is one of his best films. So, and then the other one is a similar in style film that is directed by a certain Evan Jacobs, who did a fairy tale boxer film in a similar style. So definitely check those out, those discussions out that we'll be having tomorrow, which Evan Jacobs may or may not make an appearance. My name is David Streggy. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, so thank you for joining us for Brandon's SeptumSin versus the World discussion. And I also moonlight at Delusions of Grandeur, where I do some pickup videos of my own, which I just was doing before I got signed on here. Finally, kind of a free video pickup deal thing going on to show you exactly what I've gotten within my COVID-19 stay at home buy fanatic era. So, but in any case, definitely check out some of my reviews that I have on the channel as well. I do reviews there too. So, yeah, like, share, and subscribe to SeptumSin versus the World, Inside Movies Galore, Drunken Master Studios, Dane Kyle, Delusions of Grandeur. Definitely give a shout out to all of those.
When Indie Horror Film Creative.
Indie horror.
All of the links to these channels are in the description down below. I actually have it written out so that in case I was to forget, I actually have them there. So anytime you watch one of my videos, if you want to check out any of these fine individuals, you should check out that description because it'll send you right to them.
Yeah, I have to do that for the eBay sellers that I've used, just because I love them and I want to send some business their way, but because I'm terrible with names, I mentioned that the names are in and the links are in the description below, which they are. I've gone back and added it to all the descriptions of the videos that I've done previously, and I've been doing it from now on. But yeah, that's another reason why I do it, because I do all those as of right now. I do them all one take, no cuts, just live in front of the camera, just go for it. And as of right now, but in that respect, it's like, well, I'm terrible with names. I hate to butcher it, so might as well just put it there so people can go and send them some love, because they've been very good to me.
So also, just as a note, unfortunately, I had gotten a hold of Mr. Jacobs, and he had said because of certain things that have happened because of the recent events, which I'm not going to talk about as much because YouTube tends to flag those channels and nix them. He is, of course, not going to be able to join us, but likes our format and hopes to one day get in on the Inside Movies Galore to join us for a conversation, or even over here, perchance. But of course, we have Mo here as well with Drunken Master Studios, and we mentioned some of your stuff recently because it's some pretty awesome videos.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Yeah, I just basically got the pickups. I got to finish those out with that anime stack. I'm going to have a bunch of Criterions and Arrow sets to show in a few weeks, but more, pressingly, I've got a big old batch of Rubber Lizard movies that I reviewed, so that's going to be going up over the next couple days. If you like kaiju films, pop over and check it out.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, old Schuster Levine got me wanting to watch Rocky, so I bought the set, but it's I don't even feel like I need it once I get that Schuster Levine.
So, Jake, do you have anything you want to know about you, other than what our people already do know about you from watching us?
Well, yes, I hope you do. But yeah, I'm Jake, Kotobuki Jake. I'm the other part on this channel, and of course, I will be very much part of the discussions tomorrow, I'm sure. As soon as we log off here, I'll be putting one of the movies on to watch. And check out our other videos this week. As you can see from the videos, I am definitely an avid collector and fan of movies and TV and all kind of fun stuff. And just enjoy, hanging out, shooting the breeze with all y'all as well. And yeah. I do have my own YouTube channel that's never updated, but if you are interested in nature videos, you'll find a few of them on Kotobuki J.
All right.
And, they might be elusive like Bigfoot, but there will be more someday. We'll pester
There
them.
will be more someday.
Well, springtime is here. Sort of.
Yeah.
Just watch out for those murder hornets, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Murder hornets, which then becomes the rabid bunnies, which then, just all these different things.
Rabies.
Well, and as I've said in the past, and I'll say it again, like this coronavirus seems to be just kind of doing whatever it wants now, and affecting people in whatever ways it wants. But as soon as the inevitable happens, which is that it gives the infected a insatiable hunger for human flesh, as soon as that happens, then all bets are off.
So that, I guess, wraps us up this time around. Thank you all for listening, and I thank you all for coming on with us for a bit of conversation. We
thanks for having us, man.
Tapped on some very interesting discussions, and I guess it's time for a dinner, bed, and back to work.
I thought you were going to say dinner and a movie. I was like, get that beans and cornbread song kicking off.
You never know. Maybe there will be a movie in some of our futures tonight. That's for sure.
All right.
All right. Well, you all take care, and that will be a wrap.
All right.